wait a minute. So there's now a U.S. solar stimulus program that's pretty much giving away complete solar systems?
It seems to me that there's two separate issues about things like the Danish cartoons which get conflated. One is the question about should the cartoons have been published in the first place. Now, it seems to me any newspaper editor, anybody on a picture desk in a newspaper or a magazine, every day is presented with material where they have to make the decision, is this worth putting in the magazine or not? And I think we can also agree that maybe no two picture editors would make the same decisions. Some of them would print all those things, some of them would print one or two, some of them would print none of them. So on the one hand, you've got the argument about quality, and so should the things be in the paper?
Yes.
Myself, I think that most of them were rather tedious, and the ones that weren't were actually the most offensive ones. I mean, the best cartoon was the one which shows suicide bombers arriving at the pearly gates.
Yes.
To be greeted by the Prophet Muhammad saying, "Would you please stop doing it because we're running out of virgins?"
Yes.
Now, that has the great merit of being funny.
That has a bit of bite to it, yeah.
The one with the turban, the bomb in the turban, was similarly, a perfectly legitimate, strong, satirical point.
And well drawn.
And well drawn. And so those two, the ones that people got most exercised about, would actually be the ones that I would, if I was a picture editor, that I would have published, and many of the others were just beyond bland. So that's one issue. Would you do it, would you not do it? But it seems to me that there's the second issue, which is what you were talking about, I think, is what happens when the subject of violence arises. And at that point, it seems to me the subject changes. The subject is no longer about whether you should publish or not publish these things, but about how do you respond to violence.
Yes.
Do you respond to it with cowardice or courage? And at that point, it seems to me that every newspaper in the world should publish the Danish cartoons. Not because they like them, and not actually because they particularly want to insult Islam, but just to make the point that you don't give in to threats.
Yes.
And so I think sometimes, when people start talking about the cartoons as objects, were they good or bad, were they offensive or inoffensive, that's one half of the point. But the second half of the point is the question of the response to violence. And I think that's one of the things that has got very blurred recently. And one of the most, I think, mealy-mouthed pieces of language that has developed to justify this kind of behavior is a kind of reinvention of the meaning of the word respect. It seemed to me, when I was growing up, that respect meant that you took people seriously. It didn't mean that you never disagreed with them. To respect someone is to say, okay, we'll take on what you have to say, and if I don't agree with it, I will offer a counter-argument. The idea that it would be disrespectful to someone to in any way disagree from their system of belief is a new idea, is a new meaning of the time.
Returning now to our top story, the outrage in the Muslim world over caricatures of the Prophet Muhammad. Any depictions of Muhammad are offensive to the faithful. But in many Western nations, freedom of...
For centuries, smart investors have used farmland to build wealth. Unfortunately, owning farmland has required large amounts of capital, knowledge of agriculture, and the ability to manage a farm. There hasn't been a transparent, easy way to invest.
Do you like being on the cutting edge of knowledge? The Bible has always been years ahead of scientists. It is one of the...
But you will hear the screams of the damned ever and ever.
A person that spends his time considering what God has done is just not impressed with what man can do.
Root of All Evil was a slick television program, edited and cut. All hail Pete Starr. You can compile lists of good people.
Hello, this is God.
I've been getting paid $1,000 a month, if not more, just from this app on my phone. And I don't...
Darwin came to the Galapagos Islands on the Beagle under the command of Captain Fitzroy.
The reasons for atheism, or as I would prefer to say anti-theism, are, I would say, as follows. The first and the simplest objection to religious belief is that its metaphysical claims are not true, in fact are false, and come from a period that I would describe as the infancy or the fearful childhood of our species, when, because we have brains that seek for information and seek for explanation, brains that even now prefer a conspiracy theory to no theory at all, and are bound to do so, and indeed in some ways a right to seek in this way, explanations had to be found for things that seemed at the time inexplicable. And in the absence of crucial information, we didn't know, we had no way to know that the Earth went around the sun. Didn't know that there was a germ theory that would explain disease. Didn't have any means of knowing that earthquakes were the result of living on the crust of a cooling planet in a rather odd solar system where most of the planets are either too hot or too cold to support life, and our own is in large part too hot or too cold to support it either, and where the remainder lives on a climatic knife edge, and always has. Some design, by the way, and that's just a one solar system. We didn't know that matters of this kind, earthquakes, waves, disasters, were not punishments. It was quite possible to listen to those and even to believe those who thought that they could explain